These episodes were so unhinged. Like, we really can't have anything nice, can we? Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel, where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. And yes, I am wearing a leather jacket today because if Hannah can cook pasta in a leather jacket, I can record a video, I think. If the video ends abruptly, just know I died of a heat stroke. So today I want to discuss with y'all these explosive episodes 7 through 9 of Love is Blind Season 7. Oh my god, shit went down. I can't even believe it. Any hope I have for this season is hanging on by a tiny, tiny thread named Taylor and Garrett. Everyone else is just like on the spectrum of mess. Some really dark and heavy and intense, and then some more lighthearted and innocuous, but still toxic in its own ways. So these episodes cover them going back into the real world and trying to integrate their lives and progress closer to wedding day. This is being marketed as the Washington, D.C. season, but apparently the apartments they live in is in Arlington, which my friend that has lived in D.C. informed me that people in D.C. are very particular and snooty about Arlington not being DC. Just pointing that out for the two people watching this that probably live in DC and care about that distinction. And disclaimer, we're going to be talking about a lot of topics, some heavy, some not. And we're just judging these edited people on a reality TV show. There's a lot of assumptions to be made and a lot of judgments to be made with these episodes, but let's just keep it fun and keep it as cute as we can given the circumstances. So first I want to talk about actually Leo and Brittany, who were completely absent from these episodes. So we didn't get any updates or any closure, but I thought it's worth mentioning that they have been promoting the reunion that is airing on October 30th. It seems like they're going to be very much featured in that reunion, which is very interesting that production didn't want to choose them for Mexico, but they're fine to bring them to the reunion. I don't know, a lot of y'all in the comments seem to be fully on board with the theory that it was their choice and not production's to not go to Mexico. I'm still not convinced, but I am very curious if they're going to bring that up at the reunion. I'm very open to hearing about if and why they weren't chosen, or if they didn't want to go. I'm excited that they're gonna be at the reunion, and I am assuming they're gonna give the audience some closure on this couple. Now moving into our actual couples from these episodes, and first starting with our only hope and heroes left, and that is Taylor and Garrett. They're the only ones having a wholesome, normal-ish Love is Blind experience so far in the real world. They seem to be doing well. They seem to be a good match. The way they approach the experiment is very all in, but also realistic, and they seem to be okay with like whatever happens, taking it day by day, just being present. It's mostly Taylor who articulates this very well, but Garrett is also seems to be all in on marrying her. I'm starting to think maybe he has been single this whole time because he's one of those Tinder guys that's always holding up a fish in his photos. Apparently, once they get their Instagrams back, he shows Taylor and warns her like, this whole Instagram is fish. I could see how the girlies wouldn't be interested. So the main conflict with this couple is that she, all of a sudden, at least to us, the audience, wants to move to San Diego pretty soon. She's pushing it really, really hard and trying to sell him on it. And don't get me wrong, San Diego is the best city in the United States, in my opinion. I love San Diego. It's literally actually my favorite city. It would be really cool to move there, but it is a really long flight to go from one coast to the other in the US. And it's just like, he does have this very established family and career in Virginia. He's like put in this position of like, it's her way or the highway, even though she doesn't frame it that way, and she's pitching it in a very smart way to him this whole time, and he's very open-minded about it. But she keeps trying to sell it as like, oh, I have all this family there, as if that's a huge selling point for him. But like for him, it's not his family. Yes, they're getting married, but he doesn't know these people, and it's not gonna substitute his family completely. Like, this is a different family. It's just very fast to be deciding to get married, and then on top of it decide to move to where her whole support system and whole family is. I think it's kind of a lot, and she's very much downplaying it because I think she's like trying to convince him that this is a great idea. He seems to be very seriously considering it, but I understand why this is kind of a lot, and I don't know how adamant she was in the pods about this, or like, I don't know if it's like that clear what timeline she's thinking, but it seems like more urgent than I would have expected. And then also, of course, because of this, his family is very kind of sad or feels very bittersweet about their whole engagement. Garrett's parents seem to be like very practical people that are like supportive of their son, but also like, this is just really fast, and it feels like you're being forced by this external thing, the show, to meet all these deadlines with their engagement instead of just taking it at their own pace, which is like a very normal like reaction. And Taylor is great at like explaining this whole process to the parents and seeming very trustworthy. Like, I was impressed. She even mentioned like, you know, whatever happens at the altar, the best decision for one of us is the best decision for both of us. So it's sort of implying that like, if it's a no at the altar, it's for the best in the long run, even though I'm sure she'd be upset and everything. But like, I don't know, she just explained how she's thinking of this very irrational, crazy experience in a very rational way, or at least in the most rational way she can. Taylor's doing everything right. I just feel like she's kind of underestimating how much he is giving up. Even her friends, when they meet her friends, which, side note, when they meet Taylor's friends, you can tell the cameras did not fit in that apartment. Like, welcome to big city living. The camera angles were like right on the friends. I felt like I was freaking in the room with them. It was tight. But anyway, so Taylor's friends even acknowledge like, this is huge for you to like get married and then also move across the country. We've known each other like 3 weeks at this point. You don't know if it's gonna work out. Like, I know they don't want to say that, but like, so I have a lot of hope for this couple. I do really like their dynamic. They had a really important moment too as a unit when they were comforting Monica and their engagement broke up. Taylor and Garrett were both there for her. That was like a sweet moment where it was like the focus was on a different couple, but like, I think it was an important thing to show Taylor and Garrett being like a supportive unit to someone else. I do have some concerns about the teaser because we've seen it multiple times that like she kind of hints at, does she need to be going through his phone because he says like an ex texted him or something, and Taylor does seem really upset. So I don't know if that's enough to break them up. They do make it to the wedding from what I've seen in the teasers. I think they'll be okay, they'll weather through it, but like, it's a little scary, a little shaky, but they're the only couple we can have hope in, y'all. Like, that's it. We have no one else. So like, I have to have hope for them. Love is Blind randomly posted a picture of Garrett with like really cool hair now. He's looking really good these days. So like, I'm hoping they're just like a stylish, cool, power couple type, and I hope they make it. They're our only hope. So let's get into the mess. Oh my god. Oh, and this is a big one. Tyler and Ashley. Our religious traditional couple seemed so good at first and turned out to be one of the worst. Like, you want to talk about the Bible? You want to talk about Revelations? Revelations 3, as in 3 children that he has, that he owes $30,000 in child support for. So as usual, if you're not watching TikTok, you're only getting half the story. There was an expose by the same girly on TikTok that always does the big Love is Blind exposes. She was like boots on the ground for all the Trevor stuff earlier this year. I think Storytime with Ricky is her handle. Something with Ricky. She's fierce. She somehow is the premier Love is Blind detective. She made a TikTok. I'll link it below. This did end up coming up at the end of these episodes, but he seems to be spinning his own narrative that doesn't really line up with the many receipts that exist on the internet about it. And honestly, the scene on the show, if I didn't have the context of someone explaining the situation on TikTok, I would not have understood the scene we actually got to see in the show. Because it's really vague. It seems like an argument happened off camera, and then the couple has to come back the next morning and like unpack it for the cameras and try to make it sound organic. Tyler and Ashley have a conversation about this. She's still very pissed that she is finding this out 2 weeks before the wedding. He is claiming that these 3 children are sperm donor babies, but to someone he knows in real life. Based on the TikTok, I mean, it's hard because the show just didn't give us much, so I do have to rely on the internet to supplement. It does seem like he was helping a couple conceive a child, maybe a lesbian couple, presumably, from what I understand. He helped them with 1 child, but then the couple broke up, and then he moved in and fathered 2 more children. I think they're twins. I'm not sure. I didn't deep dive fully into his baby mama's actual, like, full expose. I just got the summary from Ricky. But the main tea is that he has 3 children, and on the show he claims he was uninvolved in their lives completely. I don't think we saw that yet, but we might see that in upcoming episodes. But he refers to them as sperm donor babies. If you do a deep dive on the situation, there's plenty of photos of him being very involved in these children's lives, as a father figure would be. So like matching pajamas at Christmas and going to the pumpkin patch and that kind of thing, where he's like with the 3 kids and fully there. I guess the lesson here is like, when it seems too good to be true, it probably is, because it is for Ashley, and it's so sad. She deserves so much more than this. And he didn't mention anything about child support either, and the allegations are that he owes $30,000. The man seems like involved and legally responsible to some degree, at least more than he's letting on. And it's depressing, and I hate it. I honestly think, and this applies to several men on this cast, like, I think Love is Blind just struggles with casting men. The reality TV audience is predominantly female, and women are the ones that are watching and know about the show and know how it works and know everything about it enough to like maybe want to audition. And I feel like I've seen casting calls for Love is Blind that are like, we need more men. They can find plenty of women, but not many men. So I think that's why like production doesn't really deep dive on these men a lot of the time. And that's not to say like there's a lot of toxic women on this cast as well, but I just mean like these types of things, like the Trevors or the Tylers with 3 kids and stuff, or the Stevens, or that guy that was super broke with Renee with the lawsuit, all that. These instances, I think sometimes production just gets desperate and just like hopes for the best or something, but it's fucked up because it gets very dangerous very fast. And it's bonkers to me that Tyler, every scene we saw, was talking to Ashley about having kids. I want kids right now. Sir, you have kids right now. You have them. Do something about it. Like, are you kidding me? The audacity for him to be constantly just like, and what are we gonna name our kids? Let's have 7 kids. Like, pay for the 3 you got first and then talk. Maybe it's like a Nick Cannon or Robert De Niro thing where he's like obsessed with making children. I just couldn't believe, like, and I knew because as soon as I like posted my video, all this stuff was coming out. Like, y'all were commenting about it, and I was just like, oh my God. So going into these episodes, I already knew about the Tyler stuff. It had all come out. Every scene of him just made me so disgusted. Like, why are you talking about having more children? Like, let's regroup here and evaluate. I would think he wouldn't want to have kids anytime soon if he abandoned 3. But all he can talk about with this woman is having more kids. Talking about Christmas traditions when there's photos of him doing Christmas with like this other family, lying straight to her father's face. This is terrifying behavior. At least this all came out before the reunion was recorded from what I've seen, so I think it will be addressed, and I'm scared for them. I mean, I hope Ashley has the wherewithal to cut it here, but I don't know, she was just so sold on him. I get scared about where they're going. It was very disappointing because I really believed in this couple. I was most certain about them, and now they're down at the bottom, and like, even if they did get married or anything, we don't know what's going to happen after this reunion where they have to face all of these allegations. It's going to get messy, but I think we'll hear more at the reunion. Next, let's talk about Hannah and Nick D. Oh my god. This couple, at least, it's not so dark as the others, but it's still very toxic and messy. It's hard. They're both like immature in different areas of their lives. They're the young ones, they're the Gen Zs, and I've appreciated their humor throughout. And the big issue in this relationship is Hannah herself, and how she's approaching it. Nick is honestly coming off pretty well in this edit. He just has his own deficits in life that are also not great going into a marriage. And when they're still in Mexico, Hannah kind of alludes to how she is teaching him so much stuff in life. And in the teasers, there's like a scene of her saying she taught him everything he knows or something like that. And I kept seeing those scenes like, what are you talking about? You're teaching him so much, or that he's learned so much from you. Like, what could that possibly mean? But then they get to the real world and it starts making sense. I'm sorry I doubted Hannah on the things she could teach, but like, the girl is a damn near professional at adulting, for lack of a better word. She really has her shit together in that department. When they move in together, they start realizing they approach their households pretty differently. I relate more to Nick than Hannah, who is just so on top of every logistical part of her life. She's vacuuming her house once a day. Could not be me. She's investing in stocks. Could not be me. Good for her, honestly, having it this together. I don't think I ever will. The problem is Nick is very far behind having that life independence for all the logistical things. We find out he lives with his parents and seems to have always lived with his parents aside from when he's away for sports. It's a beautiful home. A lot of rich parents this season. Garrett's parents had this like whole estate. Nick's house is very nice, very big. He has not learned life skills that you only learn when you're out on your own. His parents pay for a lot of his bills. He probably doesn't even pay rent, huh? I just realized that. The man doesn't pay rent. Oh my god. It's just wild to me to be Nick and to decide to go on a show on the fast track to marriage. Like, he needs to learn to like move in with someone first before attempting to be in a marriage for life. So I think that's Nick's issue. I've seen the term man-child thrown around, and he's just like spoiled, and he's older than most people are when they do go out on their own. And I think Hannah mentioned she's been out and independent since she was 18, and I think in a marriage she was looking for someone that matched that energy and had that independence to like support each other and become bigger. That being said, Hannah approaches Nick in a very mean and condescending way every single scene they're in together. From making a stank face at his little stuffed animal to constantly asking him like questions, like as if interviewing him, like, if I don't tell you to pick up the trash, will you pick up the trash? If I don't tell you to do laundry, will you ever do laundry? Can you mount a TV? Like, she clearly believes there's a right answer to all of these questions, and he is just not saying the right answer, sadly for him. And she's just super mean and condescending. So like, the demise of this relationship is mostly Hannah, in my opinion, because Nick seems very willing to learn. I just think he didn't even fathom what he was getting himself into. Like, if he's never lived alone or been independent in a real way, you just don't know till you know, till you have, like, till you're thrown into the deep end. He doesn't know the toll, like, all these household chores take. Hannah spends $300 on groceries, probably because she seems to be a really good cook, so I think she makes, like, elaborate meals. Groceries are expensive, but I think you could get by on a bit of a cheaper budget, but it's not as elaborate meals, pretty basic meals. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. That's the tea with Nick. Like, has no idea what he's getting himself into, and that's on him for signing up for this weird fast-track marriage project. She is just really frustrated by that and assumes everyone needs to be like her exactly, and he should just know all these things. And she's literally telling him to his face, like, I'm smarter than you, I'm more financially literate, I'm more emotionally intelligent, like, just to his face listing it off. And Nick, honestly, this whole time is being pretty patient and nice about it all for how mean she's being. And people like this are just so exhausting, where your whole relationship is just roasting. And I understand her, like, roasting him for not knowing how to boil pasta, or, like, looking for the pasta in the fridge. Like, what was that? She should make fun of him for that, but in a funny, lighthearted way. She does it, like, in a mean way. Not knowing how to boil pasta at 28, you can make fun of someone for that and be like, oh my god, you're so funny. Like, that warrants some light roasting, in my opinion. I think she's just not willing to teach him that much. Well, she just has no kind of patience to teach anyone anything. She's just kind of like a bully about it, and doesn't seem to be into him at all at this point. Doesn't show him really any affection. Is just constantly grilling him and putting him down for not knowing this and that. I think it's super telling that her brother, who was very cool, he came in, that's when she was cooking in the leather jacket. Once Hannah left the room, her brother told Nick, like, yeah, I have the same problem with her. And he loves her, but he's like, it's tough. Like, she dishes it out and she can't take it back. Like, Nick tried to bite back, and it was very lighthearted and funny, saying like, oh, that's the unemployed lifestyle, huh, or whatever. And just kind of making fun that she's unemployed right now. And she did not take it well at all. And it's just like, girl, you spent all day making fun of him being cruel, and poor Cade, her brother, is like in the same boat. And I'm like, oh no. It's not like a problem with Nick specifically. I think she just treats the people closest to her like this and thinks this is closeness or love or tough love. I don't know. People like, I think just some people are like this. I'm not into it. And the funny thing about people like this too, or at least Hannah that we saw, is that she's completely the opposite when she's making a first impression. When she meets Nick's parents, who are adorable, so sweet, she comes bearing really thoughtful gifts and being super cool and nice. And it's interesting. I feel like people like this are meanest to, like, the closest people to them, and when they're meeting someone for the first time, they're not mean to them yet. They're good. She's very charismatic. She's very warm and inviting. And his parents are, like, in love with her at that point. Like, why can't she just be like this more of the time? It also checks out, like, with the pods. She had multiple men interested. Like, she's good at making these first impressions, but I don't know if she just, like, gets too comfortable or just has, like, the superiority complex that makes her put down the people close to her. Even her parents, when they met her parents, they were like, girl, please chill out, relax, what is wrong with you? And they seem very nice and rational people. They're very supportive of them. Like, they don't care what happens. They felt like very picture perfect American sitcom parents to me. So I don't know where Hannah came out like this, or maybe her parents are different, you know, at home, but they just seem so laid back. I'm like, why did Hannah end up like this? Are these the same parents that, like, kicked her out at 18? What is going on? Like, maybe I need to watch one of those, like, Therapist Reacts to Love Is Blind to understand. But I feel bad for Nick, because I feel like he's holding on to that first connection with Hannah, where she was warm and fuzzy and nice and funny and all these things, and now it's just constant berating him and just condescending. Like, to say to someone like, I'm smarter than you, just to their face. And that's where Hannah's deficit is, because as good as she is at all this logistical stuff in life, her emotional maturity is very stunted and feels very like high school to me. And she is aware of it. She mentions it to a couple people here and there, like, oh, I know my bad habit is like nitpicking and want everything to be perfect. And her parents even roast her in this way, like, yeah, if we wanted perfection, we would have thrown you out a long time ago. Like, one of the first things that you have to accept in relationships is that you can't change other people, and hopefully you find someone with good compatibility where you don't force people to constantly change or be exactly like you. You have to like accept they're not gonna be exactly like you, and that's where she just seems to lack experience or maturity in that. And Nick, on the other hand, seems very emotionally intelligent with how he's dealing with Hannah. Like, he tries to give her a little roast, and then he's very cool about not feeling emasculated by all this. Like, he's very cool with her being a strong, independent woman. I appreciated that Nick wasn't embarrassed by living with his parents. As much as it has stunted him in life, I think it's such a blessing to have parents like this and like a home, like a childhood home like this. And as someone who doesn't have that, I guess I can forgive the lack of maturity in adult life, just because that seems like really nice to have. I'm not trying to be shady saying this, but like, it must be nice to be that privileged. But I understand her side of like, I think she was looking for all these financial benefits from a marriage, from like joining together in finances, and got a big rude awakening realizing like Nick doesn't really pay any bills. She's approaching it all wrong, and I think she seems a little self-aware about it, but like not enough to take any actions to like fix how she treats others. Eventually it's gonna catch up to her in her life. If someone like her brother, who loves her dearly, is also feeling like she's mean to him and bullies him, like, she's gonna have to face this problem and like work on herself. But as far as this couple goes, they should not be together. I mean, I think he needs to like find a relationship where he can take the independence slow and like move in with someone, and she needs to just work on herself and how she treats the people close to her. Self-reflect a lot, because she has all the goods. On paper, makes like an excellent partner. It's just like too exhausting to be around this kind of energy all the time. Like, I hope the best for them individually, and I think they're definitely not saying yes at the altar. I felt that last video, I feel it now still. In the teaser though, there seems to be some conflict brewing, because at the Pot Squad 1920s party, Nick seems to flirt a little with Katie, who is the one who looks like one of the Mormon wives to me. The Secret Lives, Mormon wives. She seems to be like chasing after him, and he seems to be like flirting back. So Hannah seems pissed in the teaser. So like, already they are not a good match. And now if he's like flirting with someone else, or like if she's being super insecure and jealous, whatever it is, or some combination of both, like, this is gonna be disastrous. I'll be seated with my popcorn, I guess. I do wish the best for them. I think they just both have growing up to do in certain departments, but I think life will catch up to her, and now being on TV too, like, she's gonna get humbled, I think. Okay, next let's talk about Tim and Alex. Oh, let's not talk about Tim. Can I skip them? Can I? Oh god, I just, already, this couple should have been done in Cabo. Their fighting styles are very incompatible. Alex seems very toxic. Tim is annoying. There's nothing redeeming about this couple for me. They just seem totally incompatible. Like, she likes to cuddle. He hates to cuddle. His place is very tidy and orderly, and her place is a mess with a capital M-E-S-S. I literally, in my notes, it's mess. When Tim walks into her apartment, it's literally the "bitch, you live like this" meme, or like the Hillary Clinton one even. I can definitely see how she's never lived with another person before. And listen, I may or may not be a couple shopping sprees away from her situation, and I understand people have executive dysfunction issues. I have them pretty bad, and she might have them as well. I mean, she's got some issue with the mess, but like, I just don't understand how she thought she'd be ready for joining a life with someone. Seeing his place, which is very large too, very spacious and very tidy, it's wild to me that the guy who can't stop talking about that dog in him is the mature one in this relationship. It's not just the mess with Alex, like, it's just how her attitude. She's just always negative and just like annoyed at him. Once they made up from their fight, they went right back to their bickery dynamic. I just don't like this couple, and I was so heartbroken by the scene where they meet her father, because I just hate it when like there's a parent that's so sweet and nice and like hard to please, and like they go through all this effort to like convince them, get them on board with this engagement, just for that relationship to be super toxic that there's no way in hell they're saying yes at the altar. You know, it's just like, why put the father through this? She had built this up as like, it'll be so hard to get his approval, and he doesn't know about the engagement part of any of this. She like makes a whole plan with Tim on how to approach the dad on it. Slowly throughout the time they spend together, like Tim wins them over. They have commonalities that the dad and her brothers start to really warm up to him. And then when he talks one-on-one with the dad, like he's really earnest about his love for Alex, and like the dad is emotional, and it's just like, it's just heartbreaking to me, because I'm just like, you two are toxic together and should not be together. And now you're bringing this wholesome father and his blessing into it, and you're just wasting this man's time and emotions for something that should not work out, and I don't think will. It's so hard though, because, you know, he was so loving about Alex to the dad. So it's like, are you gonna stay together? Are you gonna get married? I don't know, but I don't approve if they do. They're just not compatible, and she just seems kind of toxic the way she fights. We didn't get to see it, but like, it sounded pretty damn toxic. And that's about it. I mean, there's not much else. Anytime they're there, I'm just like, oh, you two again, bickering. It's no hate to them individually. Like, I don't feel like I know them that well. This couple doesn't move me in any way. Next is the bombshell. Monica and Steven. Holy crap. I mean, I was in line when I said this was a wild card couple, and they sure as hell wild carded me. I told y'all, like, he reminded me of Trevor if Trevor had made it past the pods. He was just so overly wholesome about everything that it just felt calculated or something. And it's interesting because at first, Monica seemed like the villain in this relationship. On one hand, I appreciate she like knows what she wants and knows her worth and what she deserves, but the way she goes about it is just annoying to me. Like, the whole flowers thing was just like, oh my god, shut up about the flowers already. She confronts him like, oh, in the pods you said you would get me flowers and you would do this and that and have all these actions. She has a point. Like, it is important to pay attention to words versus actions, and if they're not matching up, then something's up. And I think that was like her trying to bring that to attention and hopefully get him to improve that or fix it. But the way she did it is just like kind of condescending and just kind of like whiny about it. And she kind of seems superficial too. Like, she's like, my third love language is gifts, which like, there's only 5 love languages. Like, 3 out of 5 is not that high priority. And he's like talking about a Kate Spade bag, but she's like, oh no honey, I want YSL, I want Louis Vuitton, and obviously he doesn't know what that is. So I think also like there seem to be some like interesting class dynamics too going on, where I think he's more working class and she's less. I forget, is she a lawyer or something? I feel like she's in a career that's more corporate-y or lucrative. It's escaping me right now, but like I think it shows, and it just kind of feels a little like she's being a bit of a little princess, like just wanting these gifts. She often had good points. She just went about it in a really like way. And like the fireworks thing, I was just like, oh girl. After the fireworks in Cabo, she came up to him like, oh, real romantic of you. It was very like passive aggressive, sarcastic, and I was just like, oh girl, here we go. Like, oh, why are you being like this? She also seemed like annoyed by everything he did. Like, he would fold a shirt and she'd be like, you fold shirts like that? Like, just icked out by it. It seemed like even from the last episode, she was already getting the ick. And I get it. I get why she's getting the ick, because on his end, he's also being very weird. In that conversation where she's asking him for flowers, he seems to be very like flustered by that confrontation and seems to be like, oh my god, this commitment, I'm like coming to terms with it. And then she's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you signed up for this, blah blah blah. Why are you still pondering about the commitment? And he's just kind of overwhelmed. It makes more sense later, I guess, because doesn't seem ready for monogamy, period. Well, we talked about the boners last time. I don't know. Y'all, I got demonetized last fucking video. How am I gonna talk about Steven without getting demonetized? Okay, anyway. Okay, so they showed us a lot of scenes of Steven being pretty fixated on relations. I'm just gonna say that because just to be safe, sorry y'all. There was the whole poking her all the time thing, how the wind blows a certain way and he gets aroused. We see them in these episodes go on this plant shop date, and Monica's being very annoying there too, like somehow making arts and crafts like a super competition and insisting she wins. You don't win at arts and crafts, you just, girl, shut up. But then there's like a confessional of him where like he's talking about like getting rewarded for dates like this with relations and hoping for that outcome, and just like mentioning, and then back in the fireworks thing, like they have that little tiff kind of in front of everyone, like passive aggressive thing, and he tries to go fix it by like interrupting her conversation with Taylor. Somehow he gets on the topic of like homewreckers and how they're all gonna be wanting to suck his thing after the show comes out and all these things, and people are just like, huh? How did we get here? Because the thread was not there. And so we had all these scenes showing how fixated he was on the physical relations. And then we get to this shocking scene. And honestly, the editing on this scene was chef's kiss, submitted to the Emmys for best clip. It was dark. The music was intense. A woman behind a door, we don't know who it is, then reveal it's Taylor. What? And then cut to Monica. She is crying. They're crying, talking about how dare he, all these things, and then cut to, you see him, he's still in the room, and they're saying he's evil. It was like reality TV magic. And then on top of it, when Monica and Steven are having their breakup fight conversation, you get sirens in the background. Those sirens were paid actors. That was a great touch. I was like, oh my god, a cheater, call the police. I really thought something bad happened when I first saw this scene. I thought someone got hit, someone got something. Steven had been DMing women about kinky things, dirty DMs, explicit blankety blank. He apparently didn't sleep at the apartment because he was at a sleep test the night before. Attention cheaters, new excuse just dropped of where to be when you're not at home for the night. She is just so over it. And I mean, this is where her kind of bitchy energy really came in handy. It was brutal, but it was good for her, like not taking any bullshit. And that's why I think like, I think her attitude comes from like experience and like just, she's older. I think she's one of the older people in the couples, mid-30s. I feel like she's just seen all the bullshit and is tired of it and is very like demanding of what she wants. It's just the way she goes about it puts me off quite a bit. But like, I think if it's just that she was icked out by Steven for a while and like that ickness was coming through every conversation and interaction. It's just wild because he was presenting this wholesome thing. And also, cheaters are getting smart, because I wouldn't have suspected him of cheating when in the pods he mentioned he had cheated before in this same way, it sounded like, and was in therapy for it, all these things, and worked through it with a past partner. I would think a cheater who intends to cheat again would not come out the gate saying, I've been a cheater before. Like, I feel like cheaters want to do anything but draw attention to them potentially cheating, you know? So that's why I was like, oh, maybe cheating tendencies would come back, like, down the line, like, in a marriage. But since he's so currently aware of past cheating, like, he probably wouldn't do it this soon, right? But no, he would. So that happened. But I wasn't surprised because I did feel something was just off with Steven and reminded me of, like, the phony, wholesome guys we've seen before. Or mostly just Trevor, but that's enough because Trevor was kind of like a big reveal last season. But yeah, it just felt like he was overcompensating, and I think he was. The man seems to have some sort of maybe sex addiction going on, and I hate at the end he just admits, like, yeah, I don't know why I came on this show. Like, why do we always end up here? But that's what I'm saying. Steven is an example of, like, I just don't think they have a big pool of men to cast on this show, because it's not just that, like, men looking to settle down don't exist in society. Love is Blind has, like, a certain look criteria, first of all, of who they're willing to cast. They're not casting Joe Schmo down the street and actually testing if Love is Blind at that. They have this threshold of, like, conventional attractiveness that can be on TV. That alone narrows down your pool of eligible men. Many men probably haven't heard of this show. Many men who are normal and chill probably go through normal conventional dating methods to marry someone. I think more women than men in general are more interested in, like, the fast track element of this show. That's a lot for, I think, most people in general to sign up for. And the demographic of the audience is mostly female, so the people familiar with what the show is and the potential of it are mostly going to be women. So it's just like, I think that the proportion of women signing up to be cast on this is so much greater than the men. And I think, yeah, some women end up being toxic and not good partners, but there's been quite a few men that end up being straight up, like, dangerous or are lying about these crazy, huge life things like Tyler is. And I just think production is just more desperate for the men that meet all these little criteria they have for the looks and reality TV charisma, who knows. I just don't think they do a due diligence. Like, they do a simple background check, but they don't press further. They don't go digging through people's Facebook from 10 years ago, or even legal things that don't show up on background checks, because not every single thing shows up on background checks. So, like, I just think it's, like, a desperation reason why production doesn't, like, actually do their due diligence to protect their cast and crew, and just hopes that what these men are telling them is the truth. It's already gotten them in big trouble with lawsuits, and it's to be determined what the outcome of that will be, and it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm keeping my eye out for that, and it's so scary. And poor Monica, I mean, she was annoying and bitchy, but, like, she wasn't being a cheater either. Even if none of this had happened with him, I don't think she would have said yes. Like, she just seemed grossed out by him most of the time. And I don't blame her with how much and they had one conversation that also, he was talking about, like, butt stuff, or, like, kind of leaning towards kink things. Oh my god, yeah, and he was talking about, like, oh, what if I'm the first man with a vagina, and, like, fantasizing, it felt like, about that, and totally ignoring that, you know, trans people exist, intersex people exist, that do have different biology than the binary he's probably thinking about. So, good riddance. I'm glad they found this out now and on the show, rather than, like, the internet exposing and them getting married, God forbid. It's better now than later. I think she's more just, like, embarrassed, and, like, it probably sucks to have this be how your story ends on Love is Blind, where you had all this hope for something. And she gathered him too with the finances thing, because on top of being a fucking cheater, this man was broke and unemployed for a couple days, and she was like, give me the Venmo payment now. I'm looking. Send it to me now. I feel like with a more compatible person, I would hope she'd be a better partner. It's just better this happened on the show too, because it's like, oh my god, there was this moment, where he looks at the camera and he's like, now I have to live with this, and glances at the camera, and that like 2 seconds says so much about all this regret he has, not for doing it but for getting caught on camera. Yeah, he's gonna live with this, and it'll be interesting to see him at the reunion, because normally this kind of thing is what happens at the reunion, but it's like, now what do we talk about? He'll probably have some like redemption storyline about going to therapy, but it's like, how are we ever gonna believe him when he's already talked about how much he is in therapy? And it's like, well, it didn't seem to work that well in this case, sir. It'll be interesting if he tries to spin any kind of narrative to help his image and rehabilitate. The silver lining for Monica is that she's gonna look like the better person in that relationship, even though she was being pretty mean. Very interesting how this couple exploded, and yeah, looking forward to that reunion. And now to our final couple, Ramses and Marissa, and there's a lot to talk about here too. Oh my god. Originally I was rooting a lot for this couple, and now not so much. I don't see them as very compatible. I think I still like them to an extent as individuals, but I feel pretty disappointed in how they ended in these episodes and what their main conflict is now. They actually had quite an eventful few episodes. First, they had this debate about the military, which I found to be very interesting and very nuanced, and I'm glad that this is like the type of conversation around the military that we're seeing on such a mainstream TV program. Ramses is obviously very progressive and very left-leaning in his politics. And Marissa also is progressive, pretty liberal, but she has served in the military. She seems to be in a phase of life where she's kind of grappling with these two sides of her. Wants to lean more left, it seems, politically, but has to come to terms with her pride in her military service. I think she's just in a kind of transitional period in her life and her morals, and I don't think she's figured out where she lands yet. Ramses very much has. He has not been in the military, and so they have this sort of debate about it, and how he just does not support the military at all, and how she is less black and white about it, and she's more like she supports the troops but doesn't support some of the decisions the US military makes. She's realizing like there's a lot of brainwashing in the military. She acknowledges this out loud. If she were faced with victims of the US military, she wouldn't know how to react and if she would still have the pride or patriotism. She's very much going through a transitional period, and it's so complicated, so nuanced, and I align a lot more with Ramses' values. He's pressing her a bit in that direction of like, well, how can you believe these things while also being so proud of your service? I don't know, it's just like he's kind of questioning her stance on the military at all currently, and she is very conflicted. It doesn't seem like she knows. I think she's coming to a lot of realizations that are difficult to grapple with, I imagine, and I understand her perspective, because one of my least favorite things about the military is the super predatory recruiting tactics they use on young, vulnerable people. They dangle things that people want most in life, like career, stability, community, a purpose, all these things in front of really young people, like kids in high school, that don't understand the bigger picture of what they're joining, and also are at the mercy of this military industrial complex that's just in charge of their lives for however many years they sign a contract for. I hate that, and that's why like I don't blame her. We see later she comes from poverty. Her mother pressured her to join the military. These are the people that they target when recruiting. I imagine many people that come out of the military as they age have these kinds of realizations and feel conflicted about maybe what they were a part of. Maybe some don't, but some do. And I think Marissa's just at that stage in life where she's like thinking about it, but also like has to justify it to herself in whatever way to not regret this huge part of her life where she has all this community. So it's like, I don't blame people like Marissa. And I think Ramses was approaching it pretty judgmental because I understand his side of like having these deeply intense values that are not compromisable. I just kind of understand both of them, and I thought it was an interesting conversation that is nuanced and complicated. I'm just glad that it's being acknowledged. And they also talk about like organized religion. She grew up Mormon. That's another reason why she would be more conservative growing up. I just like that this conversation and criticism and honesty about the military is being had on such a huge platform. I think they both make interesting points and come from like very valid perspectives on it. Like, I know when she signed up at 18, she didn't really understand it because they designed it that way on purpose. And I think it's important that he is Venezuelan. He's mentioning Venezuela and Palestine, and I was just shocked they mentioned that. I think it's important. I think she's just going through a phase right now and will land at her values, but she's still figuring it out. And I thought it was also kind of telling that she mentioned she needed the message of the Barbie movie herself to like help her think about the patriarchy and stuff. And I know a lot of like hardcore feminists criticized Barbie for being very like a very simple take on feminism, but like many people are still in that place where they don't know how to approach it and they need the simple version first. It's just very complicated. I think Ramses didn't realize he would get this far, and I don't think he thought through what her being in the military really meant. In the pods, and she explains like she would never want to go back to the military. I think he puts a lot of weight on her being critical of it and being very progressive. I don't think he takes into account the pride she might have in her service and like the way all the people in her life are probably from her military days. Maybe he should have put more weight on that she dated a Trump supporter for many years. Like, I just think him not being in the military made him overlook what a big part of her life that really is. And I think in the real world, he's kind of realizing it, and it's at conflict with his values. And so he didn't expect that. And she probably didn't expect how left-leaning he would be, because she's still kind of like learning about being more progressive or being more critical to the military and unlearning a lot of this brainwashing she's talking about. So it's tough, and this conversation made me realize like, I don't think at their core their values are as aligned as they seemed. So that's my take on that part. And her friends were definitely more critical of him being so critical, and he handled it okay. And I just think it's gonna be tough when everyone in her life is going to be from military. Of course, that's like where she spent all her formative years. Just when the friends asked like, oh, how would you raise your children then? Like pro-military or anti-military basically is what they were asking. I feel like he was kind of like, oh, I don't think he even thought of that part of this, that like, oh, if we have kids, of course she's gonna talk highly of the military to them or whatever. I don't know. I don't think it's really sinking in for him that this is like serious. And then we meet her mom, who is reminded me a bit of Jasmine's mom, Love is Blind UK. Marissa's mom was tough. I mean, I get it, she raised 4 kids as a single mom, but she was mean. I mean, similar to Jasmine's mom, she was like criticizing Ramses' style and just like being unnecessarily mean. Marissa seems to have a lot of conflict with her mom. She doesn't seem like an easy mom to have and to have been raised by, to be honest. The mom is honestly just clearly thinks it's like her way or the highway, but also she's had like several marriages that don't work out to the point where she doesn't believe in marriage. So it's kind of like, well, you're not one to be giving advice. Same thing with Jasmine's mom. She had like a bad divorce or whatever. And I just feel like it's a lot of projecting their own mistakes with these types of moms, and they get overly protective to the point of being mean and crossing boundaries and things. So I think Marissa's aware of all this. She clearly says, like, after they meet her mom, like, oh, she needs therapy. I understand that sentiment of like, you also can't like fix your mom at this point. So I think she just kind of like works with what she has. And she knows that fighting with her and defending Ramses or something probably will cause a bad reaction from the mom. She seems to be having conflicts too because the mom keeps insisting on a prenup, which Ramses is totally fine with. But Marissa's just like annoyed that the mom is telling her what to do and she doesn't want a prenup. She's a hard ass for sure. She's probably the toughest U.S. Love is Blind parent we've seen. We don't know them. We only saw them for one lunch, so take that with a grain of salt. Honestly, up through the mom thing, I thought Ramses and Marissa could make it work, even though I feel like their values are just in different places and they don't seem as compatible. But then they have this conversation about physical relations. She doesn't want to get on birth control, how they've been kind of risking it lately. But she's okay if they have an accident, and he's not. His timeline is further out for kids. Again, I don't think he's thought about kids like as seriously as he's saying. But anyway, my computer keeps restarting. She says she would prefer them just use condoms for their relations. And he is against that, because he says he just won't enjoy it and won't get any pleasure. It was just super disappointing, especially from a progressive guy that seemed like one of the better guys on the season. Some women just really, really struggle with birth control side effects and like just don't respond well. Bodies are very all across the board on that. I've heard many horror stories about various types of female birth control that just like decimate people's bodies, and the side effects are really bad. It was just very off-putting how quickly he was just like, well, I'm not budging, and my pleasure is important, rather than thinking about a compromise. Bring back the discussions from last season with Amy and Johnny. Have you heard of the Hispanic Vasectomy Fund? Mama, let's research. Let's bring the vasectomy research back to Love is Blind. It's interesting to compare the scenario to Amy and Johnny, who had the same exact conversation, but they were a lot more compromising about it, and they were more like, well, let me look into what I can do, and her like, let me talk to my doctor, see what the options are. It just felt more like, let's work through this together. And for Ramses and Marissa, it's just like, oh, I can't do that. And she's like, well, I can't either. And so they're kind of at an impasse with that, and he seems very like counting on her to be the one to budge, but luckily she's holding her ground. I'm glad Love is Blind has been showing these stories lately, because men definitely take for granted that women a lot of the time worry about the birth control on their own. And it's only fair for them to have to think about it and find a plan together. It's like bare minimum, but super disappointing from Ramses, and I officially don't want them to get married. I mean, I don't think they will. And I do feel like Bodhi would have been a better match with her, because he seemed to be on a similar journey in his values, and at least they could have like figured that out together. And they both have the military backgrounds, but leaning liberal and more progressive. I just think Bodhi would have done well, and who knows how he would have reacted to the birth control thing, but hopefully better. I don't know. It's hard because I just think men really take it for granted, and they're just like shocked and appalled when they have to think about it for once, or sacrifice something, or you know, whatever it is. And it just comes out very selfish from Ramses. It's not attractive for sure. Those are our couples. Shit really hit the fan these episodes. Reunions coming up. I cannot wait. No hope for the weddings aside from Taylor and Garrett. And even then, like, they're not immune to anything. They have their own, like, things to work through. Let me know your thoughts on this season so far? Do you hate it? I still find it entertaining. So like, I'm not hating it. Keep it cute, keep it civil in the comments. It's not that big a deal. It's just a TV show. That's Love is Blind season 7 so far. I'll be here for the next batch of episodes, and it'll be mostly, I think, covering that 1920s parties they keep teasing. I'm dying to know the random excuse they found to make it a 1920s party, but we will see. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos whenever I feel like it about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous to keep up with me, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!